Greetings everyone. My name is Lamla Madonono. I'm a student accommodation manager at NSFAS. I'll be taking you through to our processes. If it was by me, I would say even those that are on queue, for the sake of understanding this process, because I know that is a critical part for everyone to ensure that they receive their monies in a maximum manner. Brian, can you please ask the APs to join us for this one, and they can go back after. Okay, I think we'll start then, but I just wanted to make sure that we are all here. It's a very critical thing, because when you need your funding or the money is, you need to understand how is the NSFAS process flow to ensure that you get the monies that you are owed on accommodation. The first thing that I would want to ensure that we separate before I even start on the process is, on colleges, we pay because students have signed these agreements, those invoices have been received. Please, if you do have students and they have not signed this agreement, that has an impact on you, disadvantage you. Because those students who might not know where they are, they might not be part of the system at all, and they receive monies directly, and you will complain about that. Make sure that they sign and ensure that the Zikwali submits the invoice so that all students are part of it. Also, for paying the institution, because we are piloting. When we do pilot, we took a sample, not the total population of the institution that resides off campus. We agreed on population. We want to test if our system be able to work with that population. The population that we agreed on with the University of Mpumalanga is 6,100. And of course, we've noted that when we receive invoices, there are students that are not identified for the process, which institution should be able to pay for those ones. I'm not then certain to say on their side, if you are not accredited from their side, what will happen. But we work on that number, and we do not want to compromise also the relationships that we have. If the student is not part of our list, we are then confident that the institution will be able to release those amounts. For now, we have received an invoice. I'm just doing some highlights before we start with the process, on UMP, which consisted of 6,800 students. On the 6,800 students, 6,100 were paid, and we had 311 students. They are will students, meaning they are not residing in properties for this period. They should be doing their in-service trainings. Then the institution is taking care of that. We've also noted that there are students that took their status of provisional funded. They went to reside and state that they are at the institution. Institution confirmed to us to say, these students, they are not going to be funded for this period because they are not at the institution. Some who came in, they registered the institution, they go to a place. Once they see that now everything is being verified, they leave. Because they are not there to study, they just cancel the studies, but they know they are going to stay with you and they are not going to inform anyone. The institution is able to identify them to say these ones have dropped out. We need to ascertain that the students that are in the property continue to study, and if they are not studying them, in our reports, you need to request. If you see that students are not paid, request to see, is it not because they've cancelled their studies? And if they've cancelled their studies, you need to make sure that they leave the premises, because NSFAS only caters in these buildings for the students that are funded by NSFAS and are registered at the institution. You might be provisional funded, but if you are not at the institution, then it's a loss, because the institutions must confirm. All right, let me then start with the process. The process is for students, specifically for accommodation. One, the student will apply to NSFAS. At the time when the student applies to NSFAS, they are all NSFAS applicants. They are not NSFAS funded students, they are not NSFAS beneficiaries. The response comes back to a student after the assessment by NSFAS on the application to either the student is provisional funded, are waiting for the registration confirmation, or the student is rejected. When then the student is rejected, it means that the NSFAS will not pay for that student. That student immediately is not an NSFAS student, was an NSFAS applicant. Then those that are provisionally funded, they are provisionally funded on the basis that immediately once NSFAS receive confirmation from the institution that they are studying, they've registered, and they meet academic eligibility, then NSFAS will be able. Because if a student is provisional funded, do not go to the institution and resides in your property, you assume that the student is studying. Later that the student doesn't even know where are the premises of the institution. They've never been there. They took it as an advantage by applying to NSFAS, getting the status of provisional funded. Provisional funded means that the institution has not confirmed with the registration data that indeed the student is registered. That's why we've got that provisional funded. Once the students are provisional funded, then the placement takes place. Please make sure when the placement takes place, it must be NSFAS, it must be the institution. They must be able to play that role. Because if they are not part of this role, they understand the processes of funding. As an AP or a landlord, all you're interested on is to ensure that your place is full, right? But in that process, make sure you engage with the institution and with NSFAS and with Portal. Specifically for us, if you engage with Portal, they will send us the list of all of the students. We'll be able to inform the solution partners. Yes, these students, we know they are registered and they are funded. These ones, they are registered, they are funded, we've received the claims. These ones, we have not received their claims from the institution. So that also push the institution to submit those claims in time. Once the placement then is done, we make sure that immediately after the placement is done, we've reviewed, we are happy, we then request the institution to submit their registration data, those that are missing. Registration data is a claim. This claim consists of tuition, accommodation, transport, meals, living allowance, and personal care. If then the institution sees that this student doesn't meet the distance on the policy, they don't meet that requirement of the distance within NSFAS policy, they take that student and claim for transport, because the policy doesn't allow that student to be residing at accommodation. And that's one of the challenges that you face, because the engagement hasn't happened with the institution or with NSFAS. You want to know if the student qualifies either for transport or the accommodation. For the TVET, they've got a radius, which is distance, to say whoever is a student and the home address is 10 kilometers away from the institution, those students do qualify for accommodation. But those that are within the 10 kilometers, they will qualify for transport. And they ensure that they comply, because if they do not comply, they get an audit finding. It is then one of those issues to say, was it intentional or a human error? Then is the reckless thing or negligence or part of the fraudulent act that they committed, because the student never qualified. Remember, NSFAS on transport is 7,700 a year. But for accommodation, it goes on metros to 50,000, for non-metros to 41,000. Now, you need to ensure that the students that are residing in place, you are fully aware. That's why I'm saying, with the placement, conduct institution, conduct NSFAS, ensure that those students, once they are into your property, if NSFAS was in there during the placement, I know in many of the of the places that I've identified this year, I picked up that the placement did take place, and when I asked the institutions, they said, we are not aware of the placement that took place. And when I asked the colleagues also, did you go and assist with the placement, they didn't go into other places. Now, we want to make sure, I know for colleges we did that work even recently. We were assisted by their associations around to make sure that it is very important, so that the registration data that NSFAS received, it's what you are expecting from your site. Then the registration data will be validated and then you proceed to payment. Yeah, you can proceed to the payment. Yeah. Now, once the registration data is being completed, we need to make a payment. To make a payment, we receive the information that is sitting in SQL data or platform. They send that information to NSFAS. These are the claims for this month. These students have signed the lease agreement. They've been placing these accommodations. We take that information, we review it. Are these ID numbers correct? I can tell you now, there are students that their ID numbers have been captured incorrect. When the student captures ID numbers, please make sure that you also validate from your side that what is in their ID copies or in their IDs speaks to what they've captured. Because I've got ID numbers, and we say once we see the ID number is not valid, one, we say that student is not funded, because that ID we do not know. If your ID is missing one, or instead of one it's got 0, then that student is not funded until that ID number is corrected, because we look at the ID number. If the ID number is not correct, even if you go to Home Affairs, you provide the ID number. If the ID number you are providing is incorrect, Home Affairs will say you are not a South African, because we do not have such ID number in South Africa. These are the things that we also comply with to make sure that the ID numbers are all valid. And we ensure that those that are valid also, are they funded or they are not funded from the file that has been provided to us. Now, specifically for TVETs, this is important. We've got trimester 1, we've got trimester 2, we've got trimester 3, 3 trimesters. We've got semester 1, we've got semester 2, and we've got annual. Annual, they claim for 10 months, right? Once we receive it, we will pay for 10 months. But we note then also for semester that the claim is for 8 months for the semester. That claim, it must be for that particular period, semester, not for 8 months. Semester is maximum of 5 months. You will notice those that are in semester, majority in June, they were not receiving. And in end of July, there's nothing they have received. Because they would have received, many of them, I think the last payment would have been June, June. Feb, March, April, May, June, that was the 5 months. I received multiple complaints in July. And when I looked, there's no way that we will pay. The students are in holiday, they've completed semester 1, they must come back and register for semester 2, they must qualify for semester 2 funding, so that we can be able to make the payments. Even if your contract is saying 10 months, that's what is important. You must make sure that when they are in your place, that's why we need you to engage with the institution. They will be able to inform you, this is a semester student. Then you will know in July there was no payment, and then the payment will start in August, because that's when they submit. Remember, the registration took place in July until probably 13 or 16 of July at the colleges. Then when they submit, our cutoff date is the 15th. The student go and do registration, they are done by first week of August. That's when they start to submit their registration of the student. And then we'll start to pay July, August, September, October, November. But then in July, in this month, you will notice majority will then receive probably for July and August. It should be on 2 months, on semester. That's what you will notice. Meaning if the amount is 4,500, you will receive around 9,500. That's what you need to understand, because When you claim for July and you didn't receive, it's not that NSFAS didn't want to pay you, but it's because the claim have not been received for student just did the registration and we need to do all the validations. Those are the checks that we do there. Even the cycles, which we spoke of, and the gradings. I'll come back again with the issue of movement. Issue of movement is dangerous. To the one that allows the student to move to the new property, the old property is facing a challenge. The new property that the student is moving to is also facing a challenge. The old property, the challenge that they are facing is, if they have not yet got paid, and the student never signed lease agreement, they go and sign a lease agreement into the new premises, and now our payment will go to the new one. We've never paid you, the student has never signed with you, they do not have any legal obligations to pay you, and they left. Now we're paying that one. That is that's the danger of the old one. If they allow students to move without making sure that they've signed and they will receive the money. But there must be a manual mechanism to fix that, and it is a very challenging one. It can go to legal, because the second one can say, no, the student has been with me here since the beginning. I've got a contract here that they signed manually before they were signing onto the system. You must make sure that the student, once they're in your properties, they follow the right process so that you can receive it. The danger for the second property is when the student has signed in a first property, they move to the second property. When they go to a second property, the system doesn't allow them to sign anew. And we keep on hoping that no, it will open for them to sign. And the reason is because NSFAS was not engaged. We do not know the reason for student to move. There must be valid reasons for student to move. You do not move because your friend resides in that property. Now, the system has locked it, right? You keep the student because the student came to you. You pick up later that you can't sign for the student. I will tell you, if that lease is not cancelled, as Mr. Nongalo has said, NSFAS will continue to pay that one as long as the claim is there. We receive that claim, we know you signed for 5 months, that is a contract or lease agreement. We are paying for 5 months for that one because there's no cancellation that has taken place. Then the student must make sure, you must ask the student, were you residing in any property? Yes. Did you do cancellation? Can I see proof of cancellation? All of that. Because if those things are not in place, NSFAS is a guarantor to pay a lease agreement that is signed between the student and the accommodation provider. And in this instance, the first property is the one to benefit on your behalf and not you. That's why we do not encourage any movement for any of the two. Make sure that the student resides with you, they are the right students. Then the file, once we are done reviewing, we send it to our data team into finance to do their final checks. And once we see that they are then happy with the file, the money is then released. Currently, we've been trying to push for the TVETs. We've tried to push by all means, especially we started well for this month. We paid on the our 25 was the date to say by the 25th. And then we release it on Friday. And that's what we want to also for the universities. On this Friday, we need to make sure that we release it. Mr. Nongalo has put us to that to say, please make sure that on the dates that we've agreed on, you keep those dates. And we started well with the TVET to keep those dates. I'm sure he's also happy that we kept the date. And we want to keep the second one for the universities. And there's a file that you receive, which is an upload file for all your successful students. You check on that one, you will see who's been successful for the payment that you'll be receiving. And then the money comes in. It should come in within 24 to 48 hours, that money should be in. And then immediately after that, we submit a list similar to the success one, but it includes all unsuccessful. We are not saying they are rejected. We are saying they are unsuccessful for that particular run. There are instances where then the rejections or unsuccessful transactions are permanent, and there are ones that are temporary. The permanent ones are the ones that are not funded at all. They were rejected by NSFAS. Those are permanent students' unsuccessful transactions. There's nothing that NSFAS will do to those ones. If the student was unsuccessful, the guidelines and the rules do not allow NSFAS to pay for any student that doesn't meet NSFAS requirements. That is a permanent one. The temporary one is when we see that the months need to be sorted. Probably you said you're cleaning for 5 months, but the student decided for 3 months or for 4 months. Then we are able to resolve those ones. Those are temporary situations that we are able to resolve. Once those issues then are resolved, that are temporary, we will be able then to pay. For example, if the registration data has not been submitted, I know majority of semester 2 registration data has not been submitted for the colleges, and once it's then submitted, we are able to pay. That is a temporary unsuccessful transaction because there is no information for us to pay. If there's no registration data, it means we do not know at NSFAS if the student is registered at the institution, for which cycles. We do not know if the student is a semester, is a trimester, is an annual, to which institution. Now that information which we receive from the institutions, it helps us to be able to determine the cycles and which type of allowance they've said we must pay. Those are the things. From my side, I think that was the information that I was carrying for the process to make sure that it runs smooth. And I would like to thank the association that they've been working with us here, and they've been patient throughout our processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Lamla. As the next presentation, Mr. Fozikwa, Mr. Khuputso Riba, I think we got the name wrong in the program, we do apologize. As they make their way to the stage, I'm going to take off the one presentations they are set up, so please bear with us. I'm requesting that the main door be kept open. I think it's the only ventilation we have in the room. So just allow us a minute or two to set up and then we'll be on our way. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khuputso Riba. I'm with my colleague Sianda Sicha, and we are from a company called Zippo Group, which is the solution provider running a student accommodation portal that you are using. As Sianda is setting up, I'm going to then start talking about some of the challenges that we've been facing in the student accommodation process or new system, and there's some special also some special learnings that we are having, especially in Mpumalanga, and then Sia will then come back and then process of onboarding. So some of you, if you're still looking to onboard, if you're still looking to join the accommodation providers in Mpumalanga, then Sienna will then be taking you through to do that. So I'm just going to try and respond to some of the issues which have been raised, because we are learning through this portal process. We are learning some new behavioral patterns and that we are seeing with students, with accommodation providers in the different spaces. But when it comes to Mpumalanga, we are really suffering a lot of student movement. So in the portal, you will see there's cases where you can log a case for different reasons, and 90% of student lease terminations and movements come from Mpumalanga. And we did a bit of a research and to try and find out why this is, and we found that some students are actually accustomed to moving properties every month. They were previously allowed to move every month. So they're going on with that custom, and they're continuing to do the same. I'm here to explain that we try by all means to adhere to all the rules and the agreements or clauses in the lease agreement. Most importantly, I'm talking also about 30 days notice period. We try and enforce that. But then we see that is being trumped upon by the students, and we end up being in between a difficult place, a rock and a hard place, in all honesty, between two accommodation providers. And we've tried in many ways to bring in some solutions onto the system, and that we will talk about. But the solution is not in the system. I think the solution sits in the room. We all need to assist and hold hands together in ensuring that we try and curb the behavior of student movements. So a student is not allowed to move without 30 days notice. There's only very few situations where we move students immediately. It was here in Mpumalanga where a residence bent down and we needed to move students. It was also here in Mpumalanga, I believe, that where we had a case of a robbery and the perpetrator was living in the same street as the student. And then the perpetrator got out on bail, and that created a situation where a student needs to move immediately. So those are some of the special cases where students need to move, and we try and communicate that. And we've also had an incident, or rather a situation with with work integrated learning, of students that need to then do work integrated learning outside of Mpumalanga. For those, we also needed to terminate. We try and we did communicate this with the concerned accommodation providers, but those are really very small occurrences that happen. The biggest pain point that we have is where students come onto the portal, log a case. They are not supposed to just move when they log a case. What we try and do is to understand the reason why a student moves. And if a student says there is no electricity, we do then understand that there's another 10 students in the same property. It doesn't make sense to move one student because of no electricity. So we would try and engage the accommodation provider to try and understand what the issue is. But in the process of doing that, the student packs and leaves and goes to accommodation provider 2. And then accommodation provider 2 then houses the student. And now when it comes to payments, we still have a contract with accommodation provider 1. So we are sitting with 2 accommodation providers. One has got a legal document being a lease agreement that needs to be adhered to, and the other has got the student that they're actually having. And then they're coming and saying, and this is us, to say if the students are not being paid for, evicting all the students because NSFAS is not paid. And those are the realities that I feel that we can easily solve in the room. So students, when they come to you as an accommodation provider, they have to log on to the system and apply into your property. The system does not allow the students to apply in your property if they have a lease agreement which is still active. That's already in the system. But we find that students lie and say, there's something wrong with the portal, I'm not able to log on, because they know this. So what we are going to start doing, and we've implemented that, it will start in September, we're going to give a functionality to our accommodation providers, us, that every student that comes into your platform, you can use, using the ID number, search for them, it will give you the details of the student. It will also the lease agreements that they are in, if they've got a current lease agreement that they still need to adhere to. But now what we need
been made and successfully confirmed, then an inspection needs to be done on your particular property. So then this is where you'll see over-summarized screen of what happens in terms of the inspection process, but I'll try my best to then elaborate further. So you'll see that once a payment has been made, we again assign an accreditation company to then come out to, who will then assign an inspector to come and do the inspection of your property. Now, when they do the inspection, what happens is that you receive, they'll schedule an appointment to come visit your property. What happens is that they will then receive, when they arrive at your property and they click on start inspection, they will then receive an OTP. You as an accommodation provider will receive an OTP to confirm that that there is an inspector that is coming here to do the inspection, because we are aware as well that there are some people who say that they are from NSFAS trying to inspect your property, but being actually that they're actually some fraudsters. Once they've done that, their job then is to they'll receive a series of questions on the mobile application, whereby they then are required to answer those particular questions from 0 to 5. For each question has a section, and then each of those sections have a certain weightage that affects the overall grading of the property. So once an inspector has answered and provided the rating, you'll see the system then, what it does is it then calculates all the points that were scored for each section, for each question, and then it gives a suggestive grading on the platform to say that this property, from what the inspector has answered, the system will then calculate and suggest this grading as a grade B, for instance. Then NSFAS can log into the system. They can then see the inspection that was done with all the pictures, the average score, all the questions that were answered, and then they have a report that they can then view with each section. From there, they then see the suggestive grading to say that the property is grade B. The system has calculated it for it to be B. From there, they can then say, from this report that I'm seeing, they can change the grading to say either they can make it an A or a C, or they can keep it as a B. But this is based on what they see and gather from the report. From there, then an offer letter then gets sent out to you as the accommodation provider, whereby then you can log into the portal, and then you'll be able to go into offer letters, and you will receive an email with the amount that is on offer, and then you can proceed to sign the offer letter on the portal. Now, once this offer letter has been accepted, your property then becomes visible to students on the platform. So yeah, it's very important that that you sign the offer letter in order for students to be able to see that. Then now I'm going to go to student onboarding. So once your property is signed, a student can use the same link, and then they'll go in and click on the proceed button. From there, they enter their ID number. If they are there in the system, we'll ask them to log in. If they are not there in the system, we'll then allow them to create a profile, and then we register them on the platform as unverified. And then what we then do is we then send out the list of the students to then get verified by NSFAS. So once the registration is successful, the student will then also be required to accept the terms and conditions, and then from there they'll be able to click on continue. From there, they'll navigate to My Residences, whereby they can then view the properties that belong. So when a student registers, they also select the campus at which they are studying. So by them selecting that campus, it then shows the properties that are associated with that particular campus. So then a student will then view the properties around them within that has the campus as targeted, and then from there they'll click on view, whereby they can view all the details, the images, and the type of beds that are there. A student will then select and apply for that specific bed, and then they'll click on confirm and receive an email to confirm that they have applied at a particular property. Once they've applied as an accommodation provider, when you go into accommodation applications on the portal, we can view all the students that are currently pending and accepting your approval or awaiting your approval. Once you see them, then you can click on approve, and then from there you can allocate a room number and a bed type to them. From there, then at least gets automatically generated. But one of the features that we are trying to build in now, well, that we have built in, is that there's a new process that is called a check-in process, whereby students would be required, because we find that sometimes students go to a property, then they see that they do not like the property, and then they move or they don't stay there at all. So we'll be requiring for a student to then actually sign the lease while they're at the property and to confirm that they have viewed that specific property in order to cap that gap between the students. What the student will also then be able to do is to then give them an overall rating of that particular property, to say yes, so that we are able to gauge whether the students are indeed happy with what they are getting. Because during the accreditation process, you'll find that accommodation providers have staged certain amenities, certain equipment, but then at the time when the student moves in, those items are no longer there. So what we'll then be requiring is for a student to actually then take a picture of the room and to confirm that they are indeed happy with that particular room and provide a satisfactory level as well, so that then you as accommodation providers will also then have the ability to see how satisfied, how happy are my students with the property that I am giving to them. From there, then they'll be able to sign the lease, and as an accommodation provider, you would also then be able to sign the lease. Yeah, that's it for now.
No, thank you. That's our presentation from Zico Group. I'd like to yet again say that as Zico Group, we are committed to servicing yourselves as our accommodation providers with integrity, with honesty, and we really are working hard to ensure that we curb some of the challenges that we are having around student accommodation. But as I've said, the solution is in the room. It's not just on the system. We can all then work together, or also with associations, student accommodation associations. We are willing and open to working together with the institutions, the students. This is a central platform that allows all of those key players and stakeholders to collaborate and work together in ensuring that we are providing the best accommodation to our students, which is conducive for learning. At the same time, respecting you as business people that are running and ensuring that you are servicing the students. So we are trying and doing our part, and then we go also urging the support from your side in assisting and ensuring that this becomes a better experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much to Khopotso and the team. Please don't run away. You need to also receive feedback, so you can take a seat. Of course, we will try and get the questions so that you can respond appropriately. I also don't see Lamla, if maybe we can find him to get back into the room so that we can also speak to his presentation. Colleagues, thank you very much. Will be assisted if there's anyone online as well who may have inputs. Please capture that for us. Perhaps for this part of the discussions, more interested to understand if anyone has engaged with this platform, to understand if you were able to use it with ease that is presented by the team, and also whether you are able to do a comparison. Remember, historically, there's a way in which we've dealt with accommodation You would have worked through mainly universities in the way in which you deal with accommodating students. Now that this platform is here in different other provinces, there have been reflections on the pilot. Remember, this is what we started working on in May 2023. In 2024, it's a reflection on how this process works versus what you are used to. I think Simon had touched on it briefly when he said the previous platform was different, it was better, and so on. So perhaps can we speak about, one, this platform, and also the reason we're putting it together with the process that Lamla referred to, which is linked to this process to say this is how payment is done. So previously in the process with institutions, of course, and currently, if you are then that landlord who works with the institution directly, your process and experience will be different to what we are reflecting here. So perhaps let's maybe take 5 hands to start off with. Your reflections on Lamila's presentation, your reflections on the ZICA group, and the solution that they are providing. I'll ask one of the colleagues to assist us with the roving mic. I had started on this side, I'll start on this side. If I can maybe see hands. Just one moment, I just want to start on this side. We'll start you on number 1. Then you are number 2. Number 3, number 4, and then Simon. I'm going to cut it off here. We have 5. Again, please, the microphone, I think there's a bit of an echo. Please say your name, say it slowly so that we can recognize you. And then, of course, state your question. Thank you.
Okay, good day, everyone. My name is Koketo Siena. Okay, first and foremost.
Sorry, sir.
As I was saying, my name is Koketo Siena. First and foremost, I would like to thank Mr. Lamla and Mr. Khobuto for their presentations. As you guys were presenting, I happened to note down a small list of questions. To Mr. Khobuto, you did mention that students are required to serve a 30-day notice before moving out. But I would like to ask you, how do you explain students being removed from the platform without the service provider's knowledge? And also, while we're on this part, if I'm being honest, I think the reason we as service providers tend to accept students who comes from different APs into ours while they're still registered with other service providers is because of this. And I think we must look into that. Another point, we also encouraged us to log cases on the portal, but how often do they get responded? Because if I'm being honest, we have cases that we created back in May that are still unresolved even to this day. Moving on to Mr. Lamla and his collective, I would like to ask you guys, how difficult is it to have an office here on campus or in the province that's specifically dedicated to cater for all the institutions that exist in the province? The reason I'm raising this is because one of our students, in one of our student accommodations, we have students who have never been paid, whom their allowances have never been paid. Her issue being that she was once registered with UNISA, but later gave paid. So I think we also need help on that. Another question that I'm having here is what could be the reason for when a student comes from a different service provider to a new service provider and they are registered on the portal but don't get their allowances? And lastly, I would like to find out on this, is it true that now NSFAS now offers a loan for students who wish to pursue second qualification or whom are coming from backgrounds that their monthly income doesn't abide with the NSFAS gives? Thank you.
My name is Tim Begile. I'm a landlord for UMP. My first question, thank you for the presentation. What presentation was informative. So the question is that how best can they implement what they've just presented? My question number one, in terms of the sequel, the apps, I can say it looks like they're user-friendly, but the question is the frustration. After we have used the system that they put in place, in terms of registrations, in terms of now you have been approved that your accommodation is suitable to accommodate then students. And then now you must now upload those students. I think it needs to be improved based on the fact that you start to accommodate students while there's the contract came late, while students are already in your property because of the communication that is not streamlined. And when you go to the system where it says this is the contact number, this is the email that you must use to communicate with them direct, then I can say they are not communicating, they are not responding. So it's so frustrating if the system has been put in place and the people that we have been told that these people will respond, they don't. You send whatever, then they don't. I think they need to improve in terms of communicating with us, because now, remember, we are accommodating students, then have done everything, then no one is communicating with you in return to make you, to be assured that someone is listening to you. And now another question that I have is that, yes, we do have a contract. After that contract, remember the contract was signed late. Then now is beginning of the year. Remember previously we had contracts that as landlord we prepared. And I remember a document to have a contract in place. And then when they started, some of our students, they did sign those contracts that we've made before knowing that ZICWA will have a contract in place. And then when we signed those contracts, it's 10 months contract, which is a fixed contract. And then now students are staying. Remember, we are dealing with students that are used, that they believe that it's their right to move. We are staying with students that they believe that this is their money, they can do whatever. I don't know in terms of being orientated, in terms that how NSFAS is funding. Is the same information that they're giving us. Are they empowering the very beneficiaries of the funding? Because now they start to manipulate the system. And when they manipulate the system, I can say ZICWA now start to allow them. How are they involving the same landlord in terms of that? Now the student want to move based on 1, 2, 3. Remember, my facility has been given accreditation based on the criteria, and I've met all the criteria, let alone whatever, any other things, maybe you want a pool or whatever you want. But in terms of the criteria, so I believe that the student must move and must be engaged, and someone must come and find out the same way that you came and assess my property. When the student wants to move, I believe one must send someone to verify, rather than just on the portal, you release the student. Then I'm left with the frustration. That's my concern. And I believe the contract, if there's no other reason in terms of safety that has been compromised, whatever, in terms of imaging, no contract must be terminated within 10 months. That's what I believe. Number two, in terms of the same contract that has been signed, the very same students, you put system, let's say security, you put cameras and everything, and then the very same student, they vandalize those systems, which you are paying. How will we know that the ZIQUED, whosoever who came for the first time and assessed and gave me that, okay, we are fine, you qualify for that, how do you verify that in between, within the 10 months, the system that I put in place has been destroyed by the very same students? Then at the end, you dismiss the contract that I don't qualify. What is the role of the university? In terms, I've seen the previous speaker was talking about the processes. So when the processes has been done, I've seen in one of the stages that the university will be referring students to the accommodation. I don't know whether I've missed that one. I want to understand that I've been accredited, I've paid the whatever accreditation fee per bed, and there is the role of the university in sending students to the very same facility that have been accredited by them. Do they know how many facilities within them that they don't have students or they've got frustration? What is how do we communicate with the set university? Because for me, and for, I don't know whether it's me, but I think we're crying with the same problem. So I believe that whatever has been presented today, if they're going to implement it, and then we'll measure, and it's good, okay, there's some improvement, but for now, we have challenges.
Thank you. My name is Mchogozi Simtaga. My question is directed to Sequel Group. When you were doing your presentation there, I just want to find out, in an instant that I have an accommodation and I've upgraded it, how do I then upload this on the portal? Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, and afternoon to NSFAS officials. My name is Temba Ngwenyela Shube. I'm also an accommodation provider. Yeah, my first question is directed to Khuputso and the team in terms of the process of allocating or onboarding students to residencies. Yes, we understand the processes, and we would like to, when everything is in order, things move very smooth and it's user-friendly. But now, there's one component or part of the lease agreement that is missing. And when you presented, you said the solution of the challenges are within this room. So I want to present to you one of the solutions that can be effected to the lease agreement. The reason why there's a lot of moving around of students prematurely from the residences is that there is a lack of a commitment either by the NSFAS or the students. You know, most when you enter into a lease agreement, there must be that part of a deposit. I tell you, if NSFAS pays a deposit to the accommodation provider, or the student pays a deposit, such problems like this of moving around will be so minimal. Because I know for the fact that no students will move out of an accommodation and leave behind his or her deposit. Also with you, if you pay
the deposit on behalf of the student. That deposit will serve as a sort of a safeguarding money for the loss of income within that month of movement. Because if you move around, if you move out of my accommodation, you leave the deposit. Surely I'll use that deposit to recover the loss of income for that month. So my request is that let's fix the lease agreement. Let's put the deposit at the beginning of the lease. That's the first part. And also the deposit will serve as a, you know, like my dear colleague said, they vandalize my equipment and stuff like that. If you pay deposit, that deposit are used to fix such damages, even structural damages on the property by the student. It is a known fact that most of the students they don't take good care of these residences. That's the first part. The second part is the issue of the portal. When they register the cases, why is it not possible that the portal, when maybe the student is registering a case, indicate to the side of the lender? When the student is registering a case, I must be able to see from my portal that so-and-so student has registered a case of termination, so that whenever he or she does not tell me, I'll be able to check that, oh, there is a case of moving around. So if you can improve that, you can see some improvement. Then the last issue that I want to raise is the issue of the transport. But firstly, I would like to start on the funding part. When NSFAS is funding our students, I would like to believe that they fund for tuition, they fund for books and allowances, meals allowances, and they fund for accommodation. Then, the other part that is not funded, but is provided for, is transport. So, it is my suggestion that NSFAS look into the issue of separating the issue of transport from the other costs, because really you cannot expect the landlords from the same 3.5 or 3.7 to provide accommodation, provide electricity, Wi-Fi, provide lodging, provide and also provide transport. Transport is expensive. So I would like to suggest that transport is separated from these amounts that are payable, and such transport, you decide if you want to pay it to the accommodation providers, do so. If you want to provide it to the student, do so. But I mean, if it's separated, such challenges will improve a great deal. Thank you very much.
My name is Sidney Sadie. I'm a service provider. It's okay? Give somebody.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Simon again. I think from the first presentation before we went for tea, the last speaker before me raised a question that I've already raised and I didn't get a response on, which is the question of transport. So I think we need to touch on the issue of transport because it's the one that is killing us a lot. You can imagine an accommodation or an AP that is graded a grade C, paying a transport of 1,000 rand from an amount of maybe 2,900. It doesn't make sense anymore. So that one, we are pleading with you that we need to get a response on that one. And then another issue from the current presentation that I want to raise. I heard the presenter say the students will be having a platform where they are going to maybe provide with a picture that they are happy with the room that we have allocated them in. It's a good feature, we welcome it. But also, as APs, can we also have our own feature or a platform where we should show you the after effect of housing a student in that room? Because when the student comes in, the room is perfect, everything is new. But when they leave that room, it's a disaster. So we need also that feature to show you that from accommodating this student for the academic year of 2024 going to 2025, that room I need to start from scratch to prepare it for the next student. And we don't have that revenue because already transport is killing us, water is killing us, load shedding is killing us, cameras, security personnel that you are putting on checklists, those costs are killing us on a daily basis. We improve our properties every day, but as the other speakers have said, the students, they don't care. I used to talk with other APs to say, you can fly a student to class, they will still have something to complain about that flight. To say, no, yes, we are flying, but the flight is not the one that we prefer. Because their demands, they increase on a daily basis. There is nothing that they want to be accountable of as the student. That's why they run to logging cases to say, my door is broken. But you don't ask the question that we went there to accredit the place. There was a door. What happened to the door? Another issue that I want to raise is the issue of the rating of accommodation inspection agents, the agents that they come and inspect our properties. We also want a platform where we must rate their attitude towards us. Because it's a problem that we are having. One, they will tell you that I'm on my way to inspect the property. You don't even give me a day or two to be available. We are not sitting at home. We are also doing other businesses and commitments somewhere else. At least we should have at least 2 to 3 business days to say, AP 1-2, you are expected to be inspected on this day. Because this leadership or this agent, they just going to say, I'm passing the book, are you available? You don't have time to prepare. So we need also to rate that. And also some of them, the attitude that they come towards us, you are even scared, you don't even remember that, oh, there is a notice board there, because the way this person is frustrating you, it's like they're interrogating us. You even forget. We were panicking because it was the first time we experienced this thing. So we need a platform where we must rate them to say, I am not satisfied with this agent and I am requesting another person before I get my output and the rating of my property. Another one, it's maybe a solution towards the issue of vandalizing. Can we also have some visits from maybe different agents or another department within the Zigwe company, so that it also helps us to keep our standard high and also to check the behavior of students in our properties. Because if we have people that come and monitor our places, maybe that's the chance where we will also get protected to say, as agent so and so, I went to this property and I found students vandalizing, or I found the landlord that the water is not clean. Yes, it's true. In that accommodation, the water is not clean. But sometimes it's not us failing the student, but our government also is failing us. Because when I say I will provide water, then tomorrow there's no water, it is not my fault. When I say to a student, I'm going to provide electricity, I'm paying the bill for electricity, but if ESCOM is disappointing me, then I need to look into other alternatives, but the budget for that was not there. But we get to be punished by other things that we are actually outsourcing such services to our properties, like Wi-Fi. If a certain company says, we are going to provide Wi-Fi for you, yes, it's good. You get into a contract with that company, and that contract is 12 months or 24 months, and then my obligation is to make sure that I pay that company. But when the company is failing me, I just need to go and push them. Sometimes a tower has a problem and everything, but our students don't want to understand those things. They say this rest doesn't provide us with the Wi-Fi, but we outsource these services. It's not like we are the ones that are accountable to provide such service. So we also need to look into that there are services that APs outsource. They are not within the property. We outsource from other service providers to give the student the service. I also want to raise the issue of communication. I think our ZIGWE, they are very quickly, which is good in terms of students complaining. But as APs, we still have cases from May where maybe I'm not happy with the outcome to say I'm grade B. It is very not encouraging to be a grade B. Maybe you're somewhere at town, you are paying for a lot of things, and before you were already accredited maybe by the institution before NSFAS came in, and you were not a grade B. But after, now you are a grade B. And we also request that the list of the things that an AP must have, or the facilities that an AP must have to be a grade A, let it be known to the public, so that everyone can judge themselves before an agent comes to my property to say, this I don't have, that I have, that I don't have. So I must know to say, this is what I'm expecting. Because when the agent come here, they are naming things that you don't even know. To say there is a wall heater. We never knew about wall heaters. So we are pleading that the list of the facilities that we must have in our properties be there on the public to say, if you don't have that and that and that, then you'll fall under this category. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I am following a pattern. I'm allowing for 5 inputs. We are going to take the next round. Kopoto, I think you can come up. There's quite a few, if I were to look at it, you had a lot of inputs from the users who are APs. It is feedback related to the utilization, experience of using the platform. It's a user experience, as normally that's how it's called. This is the feedback you are receiving, but particularly what you would have heard are the APs saying that they believe that the features related to their usability be also improved. Where is the feature for them to also provide feedback about student behavior, experiences, breakages, reporting, and so on, but also particularly that everything that has been presented be implemented. I know I'm summarizing, but I've captured the names of the speakers if you want to respond to them. Over to you, Kopoto.
Thank you everyone. So just firstly, I would like to say that we do welcome feedback. We believe any feedback is very constructive and it's useful, and we have noted all the feedback that we got, and the idea is to then go back and ensure that we have improvements in the system and ensuring that your user experience becomes much better. So 30 days notice. So 30 days notice is in the lease agreement that we have, and we have a process internally where we then try and ensure that the 30 days notice need to be adhered to. And we say this to students and we say this to landlords yourselves, to say 30 days is very important to be adhered to. And the challenge that we've had on the 30 days issue is that a student logs a case, and once a student logs a case saying, I want to terminate a lease agreement, what we had a process in place, and the process says, do not just terminate. Try understand from the accommodation provider what the issues are. Because if it's affecting one student, it's going to affect all students, and now you're going to end up having to terminate all students one by one. It becomes a lot. So try and understand, is the problem water? Some have said we have dirty water, the accommodation provider is not delivering water into the tanks as often as they should. All of those kind of issues, we try and engage accommodation providers to request that they fix that, because we are trying to leave termination of lease agreements last. But while we do that, the behavior of students is that they move already and they go to another accommodation provider. And now you have a problem. You're trying to solve this problem here, and then the student is living elsewhere. Now, also the same lease agreement forces us to terminate a lease if the student is not in the premise where they signed the lease. If the student moves, there's a clause in there in the lease agreement currently which then forces us to terminate the lease because then NSFAS is not prepared to pay for services not consumed for the intended recipient. And now you find yourself in a very difficult place where you have to terminate in order to comply for the student to be onboarded elsewhere, but at the same time, they are not then serving the 30 days notice. And it's regrettable that we are removing lease agreements without the knowledge of accommodation providers. The process stipulates that we need to engage the accommodation provider in ensuring that firstly we're trying to keep the student where they are and fix whatever is the issue. Secondly is to try and adhere to the 30 days notice. However, if a student has already vacated, then the lease agreement then forces us to terminate in order for us not to pay where the student is not being serviced. Now, it's a very difficult position where we find ourselves, and now we find that the mechanisms that we've put in place, which is it's the enhancements I spoke about, to force the student to go back where the lease agreement is. That's why we've built that. And now we need, and we are urging for the discipline in this room to say, if a student is coming to you and they are supposed to be elsewhere to serve notice, send them away, send them back where they need to be. If that is in place and it gets to be implemented by the system will enforce it, but we also need this room to also commit to those processes, then the student would not have vacated the premise. So they would have to be in the room, and then we will continue to pay the rightful person where the student is living. Then they need to only leave when they've served the notice. So we found ourselves in a situation where we had to terminate some of the lease agreements because the students have already vacated the premise and they are already accepted elsewhere. So the biggest issue is the acceptance of a student elsewhere. And accommodation providers come to us and say, this student has been with me for 2 months already, and I need to be paid. But when you check, the student is signed the lease somewhere else. So the system still says the student lives in accommodation provider A. Then at that point, we have no choice but to terminate so that we are then able to then have a lease agreement and be able to pay the rightful person who has the student consuming services. So those are some of the situations that we find ourselves in. And I'm sure that in working together with accommodation providers, with the students, NSFAS ourselves, we can enforce this and it can work. It can work if the same people in the room turn the students away in order for them to go complete their term elsewhere. So a few people have also raised issues around the response times, Mama. So we want to firstly apologize. We apologize for non-communication, which stems from many different reasons. In all honesty, when we went live with the customer case management of functionality, we received thousands and thousands of cases, ranging from payments to students complaining about their properties and accommodation providers, evictions and all of that, all these different things. And we had no choice but to try and accommodate the high sensitivity case classifications, and in order for us to bring a bit of stability, and those are things like sexual harassment and evictions and burning down of properties where students are found to be without any clothes and any student material because theirs have burnt down. So we've had to find ourselves having to concentrate on those, and in so doing, we do take the criticism, we do take the learnings. So we found not having responded to some of the queries that we should have responded to. Some are around payments, where are known issues that we have escalated, and then they are being worked on, and maybe those case classifications, what we failed to do, which we should have done, was just to come back to you and saying these are known issues that have been escalated, that they are being worked on. We will come back to you when we've got a resolution. So that we take as a ZICO group that we will try and go back and fix and do better. Some are around the regrading, unhappiness with accreditors, or the accreditation that you get. There's a process which is being drawn up within NSFAS to say how do we go about those regrades. Because what happens is that NSFAS has got a pool of accreditors who are servicing Mpumalanga. And then what then happens is that as you pay for an inspection, the system then allocates it to a different company, who then in turn allocate their own accreditor to come to the property. And then the fees that you pay are the fees then that get to be paid to that property, the accreditor. So then we need to figure out what happens when you are unhappy. How do we then go send another accreditor to come to your property, and ensuring that the previous accreditor did the right by you. So those are some of the cases that we have, and we've escalated the matter. It's been worked on, and due to the silence. But what we should have done was to come back and say we would be coming back to you with specific timelines. So for that, we do take the learnings, and we would like to apologize, and we do commit that going back, we're going to do better. And also in the same response, we find ourselves that we've got multiple channels where cases get to be logged onto the system, and then we've got contact agents that are able to then be able to service you on the portal. However, we also do get direct emails from the institutions, from accommodation providers, who are not necessarily logged into the system. And then we find ourselves having worked on some of the cases which came in other channels, and incorrectly so neglecting some of the cases that have been logged a long time ago through the system. And we do commit to making that more streamlined and ensuring that every case does get the attention it deserves. So on the system, if there's a question around what happens when you've done an upgrade on your system, on your property. So on the system itself, you can log on to the system and you go to My Properties, and you are then able to open your property, and there's a regrade button there on there. What then will happen is that it will charge you the same inspection fees that you would have paid before. If you've increased the number of beds, you will be charged a new inspection fee per bed, so that an inspector can then come to you. That fee is for the funding of the inspection itself, come and be redone onto the platform. So the functionality is there on the platform. We can then just assist you in redirecting that. And then user experience of accommodation providers and students. We do take the feedback. So we do have a user experience specialist that would be, and in some cases we do that, and we maybe need to go back and do the same. Which will contact an accommodation provider, will contact random student to see how they behave onto the platform, so that we can then understand the frustrations that you have. What you can also do is to log cases, also with the specifics of the difficulty, so that we are then able to take those learnings and be able to re-implement them. The solution is designed such that it needs to be user-friendly, have best user experience where you don't need a manual. You are then able to navigate by just looking at the system. So the idea is that, and you will see this, the screens are changing as you are looking into the platform to try assist with that, in ensuring the different kinds of steps being visible to a user, to ensuring that we're keeping our fields very minimal with the next and previous buttons. We're trying to do that to ensure that we address the issue around usability. And we will always welcome that. We ask that please just log a case around that and then just explain to us what the difficulties are, so that if we haven't gotten to them, we are then able to get to them. The idea is to ensure that we've got a platform that is user-friendly, that everyone can use, so that we are able to collect all the data, the necessary data for processing, and also to present it as information to NSFAS for data-driven decisions to be made. That also talks to the functionalities that we are trying to implement, and as we need to also say that as ZICO group and the service provider around the portal, all we are trying to do is to create an environment, an ecosystem, which is electronic, where NSFAS, the institution, the student, the accommodation provider, are all able to work together, and so that we collect all the data, and then we are able to present it as information to the different stakeholders, so that decisions can be taken with some data that is being considered. We are not in any way trying to not address accommodation providers' issues vis-a-vis the students' issues. We're not trying to prioritize the students more than the service providers, because this ecosystem then becomes unbalanced. So ours is to ensure that we've got a platform that allows all this information to come in and be able to present to NSFAS to say, these are the vandalized properties, and we can put numbers to them. We can say, out of the 3,000 properties we have, 1,900 have locked cases around vandalism. Here are the pictures. And so that NSFAS then understands the impact of that and is then able to make those data-driven decisions. So we do take the feedback because we were responding to issues where students move in, and once they move in, the first day they've moved in, they want to move out. And then we're trying to ensure at the same time that we comply with lease agreements. And when we try to find out what the issues are with the student, they say that the facilities are not friendly for them. And then when we check and they say they signed the lease before they visited the property. So we're trying to bring all these functionalities to say, if a student comes in, they can apply and you can tell them to come view. And when they come, they need to be able to view the place and rate the place. And then they can move in. And when the student in the next minute says, I'm trying to move out, and then you ask them why, and they say they're unhappy, but you tell them, but you've just rated the property 5. You've just taken a picture, you are happy. Why are you unhappy now 5 minutes later? So then we have the data to say to them that no, we are not going to entertain your movement. So that can also work in two ways, where accommodation providers, we are kept honest. And at the same time, we can use the data back to the students to say, if you were happy and you graded the property a specific value, you cannot all of a sudden be unhappy and want to move out. And then at the same note, we've noted the need to rate the students themselves, and then we will take those information to NSFAS, and then a decision can be taken to show this to the accommodation provider, to say, this is a student applying in your property, but he's rated 2 out of 10 by the previous service provider saying he's vandalized the property. Do you want to accept the student or not? So those are some of the things that we can present to NSFAS after that, to say, is there functionality that we might need to do in order to protect the accommodation provider, at the same time ensuring that we are trying, and by all means, to providing a accommodation that is conducive, safe for students to learn. So those are some of the things that we would be looking into. Same as the rating of accreditors, rating of students, being able to bring all that information, because no information is worth throwing away. I think all of this combined becomes information that can then be presented for better decision making. I do note the payment of deposits by students or NSFAS, but please do allow me to then defer that to someone relevant on that. Case visibility to accommodation providers. So the functionality can be can come on. What we were trying to do, and that's what we've been trying to do by all means, is to try not expose too much information that the student is saying to the accommodation provider, fearing prejudice to the student by the accommodation provider. I know that in this room we don't prejudice our students for crying out, but in some instances, in some cases, some accommodation providers have done that, where then a student gets prejudiced and told to vacate because they are unhappy, they are telling the other students to not be happy or recruiting them to other things. So those are some of the issues that we have here. But as I've tried to explain, what the thinking is that the trimester students shouldn't even be able to request a termination. It's only 3 months, you have to serve a notice. So if you stay 1 month, you need to serve a notice. Then the last month, you are going to have to stay somewhere else for just 1 month. It becomes quite painful, and it's been for us. And I must say, the movement is as painful to us as it is to you. The processing and all of this is very, very taxing. So we're trying to ensure that those terminations doesn't come up for students, for a trimester. For a semester, we're trying to say, but this we need to negotiate also with the institutions, because then they are very central, because at the end of the day, the student is in the care of the institutions, and in many cases, the institutions do guide us, where then they are able to be closer to the accommodation providers. They are able to then come view your properties and come up with recommendations, where then they say this student needs to be removed because it's an unsafe space, it's not conducive for learning. And in that case, then they are very, very central stakeholders to be engaged. So we're trying to create this environment where everyone can be able to then collaborate and be able to steer us to the correct idea. But the idea is that for semester students, it's only 5 months. Same as too short notice, you can still vacate the premise. For annual students, you then can stay 5 months, you can terminate, because it's also under the students' rule, rights to move and live where they need to live. So at the same time, we're trying to create an environment that is conducive for accommodation providers. It's quite important to also respect the laws of our students. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Khuputso. And Khuputso, I think the one or two, or at least I'm summarizing, the issue about the APs having visibility when the student complains or the student cancels. the point that was made, it wasn't made once, it was made again, and maybe it's just an improvement. Why can the AP not have a view when a student, because the student has a feature on the platform to say, I'm not happy or whatever. Why can't the AP then have a view at the same time that that input is being provided, so that again they can prepare themselves? And I think for me, just listening to it may go a long way towards improving communication as you look to your portal. Everybody who spoke about communication, and maybe obviously as a team you'll go back and decide on a way of communicating better. I think you can never communicate too much, and therefore I think it's the one aspect that I took away from all. Thank you very much to you, Khopotso, and I think you're still outside. If any one of the 5 APs raised their hands and didn't get an answer, we'll be able to reach out to you. There's a question that was asked, I'm not going to ask you to respond to it, but I'll try. And if it's not satisfactory, we can come back to it. I think it was the point about the duplicate reg. If I heard properly, the speaker said the student was registered at Junisa and then moved to Mpumalanga, if that's University of Mpumalanga, that's what I heard. Duplicate reg is a problem, because remember, in the manner in which we run the scheme, we need to pay the correct student at the correct time at the correct institution. And therefore, it cannot be that you are registered at 2 institutions, and therefore we need ourselves as NSFAS satisfy ourselves that we are paying the correct institution. Now imagine in the manner in which institutions deal with things. If you miss our claims first and we honor their claim, we do not have the funds to go then and honor the claim for UNP. Remember, again, this is funding that we receive, and it's state funds, and we can only deal with what we have. You can understand that then from our perspective, from a procedure perspective, we will honor the first claim. We will not honor the second claim. Obviously, that creates a dispute. So I just wanted to respond to that. I'm not going to respond to your question about the missing middle. I didn't get the context of it. What I'm planning to do is bring you an update on where we are in terms of the missing middle scheme. You can allow me to do that, because I didn't get the input. As to whether students can apply, yes, that scheme took off in 2024. There are students who applied. It's a very limited number of students, but it's something that we've incorporated into our processes. So if I'm not responding to that fully, you can come to me and I can take you further into that. Then I'm going to Freeman before we break for lunch. There's 1 or 2 policy questions that have been posed. It's about whether we are able to incorporate the transport cost into the accommodation cost, is one. Then as to whether there can be a physical office in Mpumalanga, whether in terms of the offering of accommodation, the deposit, it's the transport is the physical office, it's the deposit, so that then students, whether it's breakages or trying to run in between 2 APs, can be held accountable. Then obviously general communication, the issue of audit, but generically, the cost of doing business is expensive when you look at all associated costs.
I just wanted to confirm the work of the customer. I must remember what we've got on that. When you've got some hair missing in your head, you don't remember everything unless it's written down. So I think on the issue of transport, I was just confirming that the task team is dealing with that issue. And here's a reason why we've allowed the task team to deal with it. In some parts of the country, when the accommodation providers are also holding the transport money, some of that accommodation providers then end up providing their own transport, and then it creates problems in the taxi industry where there are route fights. 2, where the accommodation, where the taxi people are receiving money from the accommodation providers, they start demanding and saying, you're receiving 2,000 rand, why are you giving me 250? even though the transport cost should be 250. So it then ends up putting the accommodation provider in a difficult situation. So that's why the task team is looking into that, but it can be separated and all of those things. But the point is that we want the task team to look into it so that we figure out what is the best model. You may have one model in one part of the country and a different model elsewhere. But the issue is receiving attention. I think that's the point. The physical office in Mpumalanga, we may not necessarily have a physical office in Mpumalanga. What we are trying to do, at the moment we are based in Cape Town. Cape Town is 1,400 something kilometers from here. We're definitely going to move to Gauteng, which at least puts us at 400 kilometers away. But we are also having conversations with FAPSA as well as other people that are dealing with student accommodation as well as student affairs. Both SACPO as well as USAF has been saying to us, we've got offices on student affairs. Why don't you make them have some access to information at NSFAS so they can respond to queries? We are looking into making sure that even if we do not have a permanent office, we do have a satellite office at the university that somebody can visit on a regular basis, but also university team can have access to NSFAS systems to be able to respond to queries very quickly. That's what we're looking at. So physical presence, it might not necessarily be a permanent NSFAS office, but some satellite office that we can use, using some of the capacity from the university to deal with that issue. The issue of deposits, I did say that the task team is looking into that. We do understand the issues in relation to this. By the way, there's an issue, I don't know if it came out because my attention was divided at some point. But one of the colleagues I spoke to, she did mention this. It's not just the breaking of things that happen in accommodations. There is a very important issue that we really haven't spoken about, that of drug abuse. That happens by some of our students. I saw some of the youth leaders earlier coming in. We really need support from the youth leaders to deal with that issue. Not to criminalize young people, but to find a mechanism of reorienting them so that they do the right thing. So the issue of deposit, the task team is looking into that in terms of how we will deal with it. At the moment, we're still on a position where we're not paying deposit, but we do understand the issues of the student behavior. And one of the points I normally make when I talk about this is that we need to start holding students accountable for something. If they get everything for free, then they will never be responsible. So we might not end up with a deposit, but end up with something in the disciplinary code that talks to how do we hold the students accountable. In terms of the communication, what we've picked up, it might work here, but not work, is that it helps for the community in this room to have a way of talking to each other about issues that we face, and we have from NSFAS who's part of that. I think in the Western Cape they've got a WhatsApp group or something, and one of our officials is part of that WhatsApp group. So when the issues start coming up, then we expect, because sometimes it might not always happen, we expect that that official will then help us with that. But it also facilitates the communication here and the ability to deal with issues. I don't know if everybody is part of the Mpumalanga Association of Accommodation Providers. I really have found the ability to have somebody that raises issues with NSFAS helpful, but we also have to be responsive on our side, because otherwise you're going to think the person is not taking the issues up. So we still need to create a better way of communicating with yourselves. So I think one of the things we might want to do as we create the place where the information comes, we actually aggregate the information to the province so that we can then address those issues accordingly. You're noting, so it's possible to do that. So we can do the accreditation, even if there's one email address where this information is sent. But for people from Mpumalanga, it will have A or B or C or D, so that all of that from Mpumalanga goes there, and the person who deals with Mpumalanga is not going to go through 1,000 emails. He's going to deal with only the ones that are related to Mpumalanga. Because of the fraud and corruption that we've picked up in the accreditation and grading process, we are planning to have a monitoring process. So people will come in, they do the grading and finalize, but we then send a team that's going to do spot checks. If people truck in furniture and then take furniture out and people are gone, we'll pick up. But also, if ever there is inconsistencies in the grading process, we can pick those up. That issue of the monitoring mechanism, we are definitely going to be implementing that in the coming year. The cost of doing business, we do understand that. One of the theories that sometimes people have operating at the center, you are in Gauteng, you are in Cape Town, is that it's more expensive where you are than elsewhere. But building costs in far removed areas, there's transport costs for the material to be delivered to that point, so it adds to building costs. The IFC study is meant to help us have a handle on those issues as well. So we do understand that. That's why we're doing the IFC study, and we hope that from that study, we'll then understand the cost of providing accommodation, cost of providing a bed, in a more detailed fashion than we did. The metro, non-metro split was done after a certain study, but we have been advised that that study was too limited. I think you can point me if I've left out anything.
Thank you very much.
Somebody answered that. I think the appeal on the grading issues, it's part and parcel. The monitoring will help us understand that, but we have taken note that the appeal process, it has been raised in a few provinces that we've gone through, and we'll be looking into that as well.
All right, thank you very much for your patience. We are 10 minutes away from lunch. Our lunch is being prepared. I would like to recommend, because it is too hot, we're going to take a body break now, get to lunch. When we come back, and can we please come back at 2, we're going to then complete the cycle of the next set of questions. I must say I appreciate the inputs. I don't know if Zikwal picked up on it. Everybody who spoke in response to the presentations were actually very positive about you have a platform. It can work if used, one, appropriately, but also if used fairly. At the same time, the features must also then assist the APs to fulfill on what they need to do. With communication, you can never communicate too much. And also, in terms of communication, now when we break, I'm going to put up an email address that has been created by our marketing and comms team. They are not here today to speak to exactly how they are approaching this point. Our spokesperson has actually come up with a plan. What I'll put up are those communication channels. You'll have them here and leave them here during lunch. When we return, we take the rest of the inputs that we didn't take from the side and also at the back. We continue. The aim is for us not to have gone past 3 o'clock today, but I think we've covered a lot of ground. If there's anything specific that you believe we are not speaking to, please by all means let me know, then we can start speaking to that. But I must say I appreciate it. I hope we've covered most. It's not all. Remember, this is a discussion, it is feedback, it's your inputs. You are telling us exactly how you'd like to see things done. Colleagues, can we take a break? In the next 10 minutes, the same place we had coffee, we are going to collect our lunch. Can we please come back at 1400 exactly? Thank you very much.